Hey, I think this is video number 4. This is going to be mainly focused on Finale and using the MIDI tool in Finale, although I'll continue working with this super lame template file here. And again, I continue to apologize for not having a piece of music here, but we'll have that soon enough. I think to keep things simple now is the key thing. So in a previous video, and if you haven't seen, I'm sort of starting right where I left off. In a previous video, I adjusted human playback in Finale to control, and I'll review that for a second, to control dynamics using a modulation and velocity for attack. And I set up Vienna instruments here, at least this violin instrument from the special edition, to use velocity crossfade on CC1. And I globally enabled velocity crossfade here. Now we can get into some more detailed control of this, which I'll do in a later video. For instance, often pizzicato, because it's not a sustaining instrument, I might want to have these notes controlled by velocity rather than the velocity crossfade. In other words, how hard a note is struck. Vienna Instruments lets you customize the way each of the loaded patches deals with the crossfade. For right now, though, I want to talk a little bit just about working with MIDI from within Finale. Finale has something called the MIDI tool, which is this. It's this tool, and you get this when you first click it. I just click this away. And this is sort of an antiquated tool. I don't think it's changed that much in many recent versions of Finale. And when people talk about working with MIDI in Finale, they complain that, it's much easier to do a lot of the kind of editing you need to do working in a DAW like Logic or Cubase or something like that. And I think that's probably true, and at the same time, I would like to think that it is possible to do some of the editing we need to do from within Finale. So I just want to cover a couple of basic items. The MIDI tool enables you to control all of the different MIDI parameters of your music to an extent. And if you look at the drop-down menu, you'll see you can adjust key velocities. You can also work with continuous data, and that is controllers, right? The CC is continuous controller, so we can, if I choose this, I can select a controller to edit. Like right now it's 64. I think I said 63 was sustained in an earlier video. It's really 64. If I choose 11, it's expression. And then I could go and make some settings if I selected some music, right? So if I now said set to, what I'm setting to is I just selected expression. Now I'd be setting the expression to a certain number. And you can also go in, you can click on a measure, and when the MIDI tool is selected, double click. Right now I'm looking at the settings for controller number 11. When I click on it, it just verifies that's 11. And you'll see something interesting here. This little window, you can navigate measures this way. And you can also, if I had more than one instrument, I could go up and down here. I can also toggle layers. And you'll see that the default in Finale is that there is no value associated with expression. Expression starts out having 0 value at all, meaning that in my Vienna instrument, it's just gonna, I've set expression to 99, and ideally it should just stay at 99. We'll see, whether or not that's the case. If I go up here, the other one of these on the left I'm going to use is velocity. Now I know that I've got velocity crossfade checked here, so the velocities of these notes actually is not going to make a difference. And for right now, I'm going to leave them alone. Although the ability to program in different velocities is very, very useful sometimes dealing with certain kinds of instruments. Dealing with piano, for instance, as I'll look at some point, dealing with velocity is very useful. For right now, I just want to I want to just highlight a couple of basic things. In human playback preferences, if you go back in here, there's something called MIDI data, and you need, if you want your continuous data that you program in to work alongside human playback, you need to select incorporate data here. Same thing with velocity, same thing with tempo. I don't usually mess with, so it says ignore here. But if you want your changes to actually not be just ignored when human playback is engaged, you're going to have to choose incorporate data. And there's a lot of trial and error involved in learning what sorts of data you can and can't control, and how things interact with human playback, because human playback sends a bunch of information on its own, and it's a little cryptic how it works. So we're going to have to kind of piece some of this together bit by bit. Right now, I've set this to incorporate human playback data for continuous data, velocity, start-stop time, which I'm not probably going to mess with here, but and I'm going to leave that alone. And now I'm going to tell you something, which is that for me, I've discovered that Finale, even though I'm controlling dynamics with controller number 1, I find that Finale oftentimes will actually use send information on controller 7, which is volume, and sometimes expression. So one thing you might want to do from the outset is, if I select all and I choose the MIDI tool and I select continuous data 11, and now I'm going to set all of it to 100. That's on a scale of 0 to 127. And I'm going to do the exact same thing now with volume 7. That's where I have volume set over here, and that's the standard setting for volume. That's why it's kind of preset in there. Okay, and now I'm going to choose, I just selected 7, and I'm going to set that to 100. And now you're going to notice that when I play, ideally, we will see that. And again, it's a little frustrating, right? You see that these things eventually set themselves to 99 and 100, which is pretty close to what I set. And if we look at, if we look over here at the, if I go to the MIDI tool and I select this measure, I can see now that this is controller 7 is set to 100, and I can see that controller 11 is also set to 100. And yet, let's see, when I start playing, for some reason, it's getting some sort of message there to go to 110 at the beginning, and I don't like that, because I want my volume of my instruments to be completely untouched. The volume I want to be untouched by Finale. And the expression I might use if I want to boost up like a solo part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the control map now, and I'm going to set volume instead of to CC7. I'm going to set it to none, right? Actually, none. Here you go. I'm going to set it to none. I'm going to go back over here, and actually I'll go back now to perform, and it's at 100 now. So now it should just stay at 100 when I push play. Okay, and now what I could do is, let's say I'm not happy. Let's say I like the velocity crossfade working, and I want to just bring out this pizzicato passage a little bit more. So what I might do is go in, and I don't do this much, but that's where I would kind of maybe at the end boost it in the mix and say, I'm going to set expression. I'm going to actually get out of this and choose MIDI tool, set to 115. And now when I go in and look, you can see my expression before was at 100, and it goes back down to 100 afterwards. And let's see what that does. You see that I have those kind of controls. This gets a little bit louder. I'm going to probably spend another video on this. This is just kind of an introduction to some of the way that the MIDI tool works. I want to just end with an important note that you need to remember that there is no setting in the in Finale, these things default to no settings. So you have some other tools in here, such as, let's go back to the MIDI tool. You have some other tools such as percent alter, and what that is I can actually change controller, whatever controller I have it set to be like 115% of what it was, but that is going to be meaningless unless you've initially set a value. So in other words, if I wanted to get some change here and I was making a change to I wanted to do 115% of controller 11 to make this louder, it won't do anything unless you have started out by giving it some sort of value. Okay, that's a beginning first step. Some basic controls we can do. I'll follow up with another video. Thanks.